Well, I want to go back, though, to this disinformation and misinformation push here. And I would love to get your sense, because you see what's happening in the policy arena and behind the scenes. Can you tell us about why countries like Australia are being used as, I think, test cases for these sorts of maneuvers? And what is the U.S. government, what are, states, some of these NGOs, what are they doing behind the scenes to push these bills here? This seems like it's a real violation of our sovereignty.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's very strange, and there's things that we know and can prove, and then there's things that we suspect. We know that the intelligence community in the United States was involved in censorship efforts through the Department of Homeland Security. We know that they were involved in Western Europe. We see the same thing in Britain, in Canada, in Brazil. And in Australia, your e-safety commissioner is an American. And when she came to Australia, she very pointedly said that she had been recruited into the CIA but turned it down. That's a very weird thing to say. I think it's reasonable to be suspicious about that. I think there's some hard questions that have to be asked about that. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, but our two countries have a long-standing, deep relationship as part of the Five Eyes intelligence gathering organizations. And so you start to see these things in all the Five Eyes countries that are very similar. And then the legislation demanding censorship, not just in Australia, but around the world. I think it's reasonable to suspect that there appears to be an effort to censor the entire global internet through the allied nations of the United States, knowing that it's a little harder to do in the United States because we have this very strong free speech protection in the First Amendment. So yeah, it's very suspicious. I know I spoke to a number of senators about it who are very concerned about this, have been asking questions about this, have many more questions about this. We don't want the government getting involved in policing what we can say online. That's the bottom line. It's illegal. We do not want thought police. That's what George Orwell feared in his book 1984. That's what we see depicted on shows like The Black Mirror, and we see taking place in China. We do not want that in our Western liberal democratic countries.
Rita.
The UK is possibly in a worse position than even Australia is, because their politicians have just pressed ahead with this censorship, so much so that there's now reports that MPs want to summon Elon Musk to testify about X's role in the riots we saw in the summer there after the Southport killings. Tell me about what's happening in the UK, and is Elon Musk likely to go and be questioned by Labor MPs?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, for me, Britain is the second biggest concern in the world after Australia. Sadly, it's exactly what you're happening. The people are calling the Prime Minister Keir Starmer. They're calling him two-tier Keir because he's creating a two-tier justice system.